The rolling stock or equipment module addresses the issue gap between the fixed assets and an operational equipment management dashboard or module, because fixed assets is really geared towards managing assets that we find on a balance sheet, whereas rolling stock is geared towards operational management of large volumes of equipment. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that when we think about who would use the two different modules, I always think about accounting staff using the fixed assets modules and more of the operational or operations staff using the rolling stock or equipment module. So the first thing that I wanted to demonstrate is that we've built an integration from fixed assets to rolling stock, which is really cool. That allows an accountant to go ahead and start the setup of a fixed asset, and then we can copy some of those elements of that setup over into a pending status piece of rolling equipment that then your operations team can pick up and add the additional details and maintain those records separately from the fixed assets. So to do that, we would start out navigating into fixed assets. And I'll create a new fixed asset. And the fixed asset that we will work with today will be a vehicle. And I think in most environments, you would have a number sequence that would automatically assign your fixed assets, but we're going to manually input ours. And then we need a name. And I'm just going to give it a really simplistic name of pickup. And then I'm going to go down here to make, and we'll say that it is a Chevrolet. Whoa. And the model number is a 2500. My model year is going to be 2018. The serial number we have mapped to what would be a vehicle VIN number. So we would go ahead and input a vehicle VIN number here. So for this VIN, we'll say it's and let's see, asset condition is another one that we've mapped over. Typically that might be if I bought something new or used, or it could just be good, poor. And the accountant or the person who manages fixed assets could go ahead and input any other additional information that they want to store on their fixed asset. What actually copies this data over to the rolling stock module is this flag here, where we say, is this rolling stock? Yes. And then what we notice is that down here in the reference, when I save, we now see that on January 8th, we created a new rolling stock item, and we picked up all of the data that I just entered in fixed assets and copied over there. So this is a link, so we could follow that over there, but I'm going to go ahead and close. I think another really cool thing about this is that this hasn't been acquired yet. So folks in accounting can set this up pretty early and already have that linkage over to the rolling stock module. And it doesn't impact their ability to acquire that asset later. And then I think we also need to think about that fixed assets could be created through purchase orders and other means that are more automated than manually inputting them. So if we navigate over to the rolling stock module, we have a section here that's the equipment list pages, and pending is how this will show up in the default. So the idea here is that you have an operations person who knows that we have new equipment coming in, There's probably different tasks that they need to take with regard to the equipment. They may have some labeling that needs to happen. Ours is a vehicle, so there's going to be license plates to apply. There's probably going to be some inspection process. But at any rate, they can go in and they can open up this rolling stock. You can see that the things that I input came over here. So saved me some data entry time. I can go ahead and update the status on this. If I move it to active, that will allow it to be used transactionally, and will also show this piece of equipment in a financial dimension. So I made it active. I'm going to go ahead and locate my equipment type. Again, that'll be pickups. You'll notice that I can capture my license plate number. So for my license plate, I think I had XRP 630. And here I can capture my issuing state and my issuing county if I want to. My license expiration date, well, all of our licenses expire on December 31st. I could add notes. Here I can track, what color is this pickup? What's my cab configuration? Well, it's an extended cab. It has 4 doors, has 4-wheel drive. I'm going to designate who actually owns, what location is accountable, if you will, for this piece of equipment. I can input my tare weight. So for this vehicle, it's 24,000 and then pounds. If my license weight happens to be different, and sometimes it is, then I can put that number in here. And that's really just the basis for our license fees, which then is my next field. Capacity, if I wanted to track the capacity on this pickup, I could put that here, and then I could put the unit of measure that's associated with that. Then we have a section over here that can be fed through an integration. So if we are using a service like WEX, for example, where we use fuel cards, and part of a condition of using the fuel cards is that I need to input mileage. When I fuel up, we could get that fed back over here and get this updated. Also, we could just have a maintenance process by which, once or twice a month we have to capture mileage on vehicles in the yard or some other sort of routine. But so we'll say that when I got this new, it had 38, or not new, but used, it had 38,000 miles. I'm going to go ahead and say that that was as of Monday when we acquired it. You can also see that there's machinery hours, same type of thing. If this was a different piece of equipment, we could log some time based on some integrations that we could establish. Is this GPS enabled? Yes. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and assign the financial dimension that is for Barnesville, which is where this is physically located at. So as we went through here, you could see that there was a lot of information that's not the type of thing that would be stored in fixed assets, and probably wouldn't be the types of things that anyone who is maintaining a fixed asset list would necessarily be concerned about. So the next thing that I wanted to speak to was, so we saw how from a rolling stock, or from fixed assets, we could create rolling stock. Sometimes what might happen is I bring in a piece of equipment. Maybe it's leased. Maybe later I decide I want to buy it, or maybe we just have a timing issue. So I got the pickup in, didn't see it in pending, already have the plates, really want to use it. So I go ahead and set it up. So what I wanted to demonstrate next was that we do have the ability to take a piece of rolling stock. So I think this is the one that I want to work with, number 15. And so down here we see that there is not a fixed asset number. Well, another really nice feature is that I still have the ability to go back and link it even though my fixed asset wasn't already created. So if this happened to be the item that should be linked here, I can create the relationship now and they would reference one another at this point. So it doesn't have to happen in a particular order. You'll also notice that there's a vendor number and a purchase order number here. So earlier I mentioned that fixed assets could be created through the procurement process. Had that been the case, then we would have also seen the purchase order and the vendor that was attached to that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. There's also a configuration, and sticking with the theme of the relationship between fixed assets and rolling stock. We have the ability to configure our rolling stock so that we can say, when we dispose of a fixed asset, do we want to automatically dispose of that piece of rolling stock at the same time? So that's enabled through turning on the automatic disposal. Then we can set the status. So just as I set the pending status to active, if I were to dispose of a fixed asset, the way that I have this currently configured, it would go ahead and automatically dispose it in rolling stock. It would set the status to retired, and it would populate the reason code to be scrapped. So completely configurable, you can choose to use this or not, and all of this would have the statuses and reason codes that would be applicable for your organization.